What kind of person smashes a hotel's prized Christmas display and thinks they can walk away scot-free? Karen Mitchell, a woman whose entitlement could fill the grand atrium of the Sterling Lux Hotel, was about to find out the hard way. It was December 22, 2025, and the Sterling's lobby glowed with the kind of opulence that made jaws drop. A 20-foot Christmas tree draped in Swarovski crystals, strands of handcrafted Italian lights weaving through its branches, and a chandelier overhead that sparkled like a frozen galaxy. Guests milled about, their faces bathed in the warm glow, whispering about the rumored $1 million cost of the display. Karen, however, wasn't impressed. She stormed through the revolving doors, her oversized fur coat trailing like a storm cloud, her voice already slicing through the festive hum. "This place is a rip-off," she bellowed, her words echoing off the marble walls. "I paid for a penthouse suite, and the view's blocked by some tacky tree." The concierge, a young man named Ethan, froze behind the desk, his polite smile faltering. Karen's face, flushed with indignation, twisted into a sneer as she jabbed a finger toward the tree. "Move it, or I'll do it myself." Ethan, barely 22 and trained to defuse even the most volcanic tempers, stammered an apology. "Ma'am, the tree is part of our holiday tradition. It's been here for decades. Perhaps we can upgrade your room to." Karen cut him off, her voice rising to a pitch that made nearby guests wince. "Don't ma'am me. I'm not some nobody you can brush off." She stomped toward the tree, her heels clicking like gunfire. The lobby fell silent, all eyes on her. Ethan radioed for the manager, his hands trembling. Karen, oblivious to the growing audience, grabbed a low-hanging strand of lights, yanking it with the force of a toddler throwing a tantrum. The strand snapped, and a cascade of crystal ornaments hit the floor, shattering into a glittering mess. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen didn't stop. She tugged again, harder, and a section of the tree lurched forward, its lights flickering wildly before half the display went dark. By the time Maria Alvarez, the hotel's no-nonsense manager, arrived, the damage was catastrophic. Maria, a woman in her 40s with a reputation for running the Sterling like a Swiss watch, surveyed the wreckage with a steely gaze. The tree, a symbol of the hotel's prestige, looked like it had been through a hurricane. Karen, undeterred, stood amid the debris, hands on her hips. "This is your fault," she shrieked at Maria. "If you'd moved this eyesore when I asked, none of this would have happened." Maria's jaw tightened, but her voice remained calm, almost eerily so. "Ma'am, you've damaged property valued at over $2 million. We'll need to discuss compensation." Karen laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Compensation? You'll be lucky if I don't sue you for emotional distress." The standoff drew a crowd, guests whispering behind their hands, staff hovering nervously. Ethan, still shaken, tried to intervene, offering Karen a complimentary spa day to de-escalate. She swatted the offer away like a fly. "I don't need your pity perks. I'm a paying customer." Maria, however, wasn't fazed. She'd dealt with Karens before, but none this brazen. She pulled out her tablet, already calculating the repair costs, and signaled security to stand by. What Karen didn't know was that the Sterling security cameras had captured every second of her rampage in crystal-clear 4K. The footage, already circulating among the staff, showed her yanking the lights with deliberate malice, her face contorted in a way that made even the most seasoned employees flinch. Then came the twist no one saw coming. A soft-spoken woman in her 60s, dressed in a simple wool coat, stepped forward from the crowd. Her name was Clara, a retired art curator who'd been staying at the Sterling for her annual holiday retreat. "Excuse me," Clara said, her voice cutting through Karen's tirade like a knife through butter. "Those lights you destroyed? They weren't just decorations. They were a one-of-a-kind installation by Giovanni Rossi, commissioned for this hotel in 1995. I helped oversee their creation." The lobby went deathly quiet. Karen's smirk faltered, but only for a moment. "So what?" she snapped. "They're just lights." Clara's eyes narrowed. "They were art, and you just obliterated a piece of history." Karen's bravado began to crack, but she doubled down, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Art? Give me a break. This hotel's scamming you all with this overpriced nonsense. Clara didn't flinch. She turned to Maria, her tone measured but firm. I'd be happy to testify about the light's value if this goes to court. Maria nodded, a faint smile tugging at her lips. The tide was turning and Karen, for all her bluster, was starting to sense it. The guests, once mere spectators, now murmured in agreement with Clara, their sympathy shifting toward the hotel. Karen's face reddened, her hands balling into fists. She wasn't used to being challenged, let alone by someone as unassuming as Clara. The confrontation escalated as Maria laid out the facts. Ms. Mitchell, the damage is extensive. The lights alone cost $1.8 million to craft and install. The ornaments, another $200,000. We'll be sending you an itemized bill, and we expect full payment. Karen's eyes widened, her confidence evaporating. You can't prove I did anything, she sputtered. Maria held up her tablet. The security footage paused on Karen's sneering face mid-yank. Oh, we can prove it. And we will. The crowd erupted in whispers, some guests even clapping softly. Karen, for the first time, looked genuinely rattled. She opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. The air in the Sterling Lux Hotel's lobby crackled with tension as Karen Mitchell stood cornered, her earlier arrogance crumbling under the weight of Maria's evidence. The security footage looped silently on Maria's tablet, each frame a damning indictment of Karen's reckless destruction. The crowd, now openly hostile, whispered judgments that stung worse than any insult Karen had hurled. She scanned the room, searching for an ally, but found none. Even Ethan, the concierge who'd tried to appease her, looked away, his face a mix of pity and disgust. Karen's chest heaved as she clutched at straws. This is entrapment, she shouted, her voice shrill. You set me up to make me look bad. Maria raised an eyebrow, unfazed. The cameras don't lie, Ms. Mitchell. You, however, have a choice. Cooperate or we escalate this to the authorities. Karen's mind raced. She wasn't just any guest, she was Karen Mitchell, a self-proclaimed influencer with 50,000 followers on X, where she'd built a brand on calling out businesses for perceived slights. She'd planned to live tweet this entire ordeal, framing the Sterling as an overpriced scam. But now, with Clara's revelation about the light's cultural significance and the undeniable video evidence, her narrative was unraveling. She fumbled for her phone, desperate to spin the story in her favor. I'm going live right now, she declared, holding the device aloft like a shield. My followers will tear this place apart. Maria didn't blink. Go ahead. Broadcast your tantrum. It'll only make our case stronger. Karen's fingers trembled as she opened X, but before she could hit live, Clara stepped forward again, her presence commanding despite her unassuming frame. You know, Clara said, her voice soft but piercing, those lights were more than art. They were a gift to the city, funded by a local family who lost their daughter to cancer. The tree was dedicated to her memory. The crowd gasped, the emotional weight of Clara's words hitting like a tidal wave. Karen froze, her phone slipping slightly in her hand. The story wasn't just about money. Anna Maria, it was personal, human, and far bigger than her ego. For a fleeting moment, guilt flickered across her face, but she shoved it down, refusing to back off. That's not my problem, she snapped, but her voice lacked its earlier venom. Maria seized the moment, her tone sharp but controlled. It's everyone's problem when you destroy something that matters to people. You're not just paying for lights, Ms. Mitchell. You're answering for disrespecting a legacy. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a chorus of disapproval that boxed Karen in. She tried to pivot, pointing at Ethan. He provoked me. He wouldn't move the tree when I asked. Ethan, pale but resolute, shook his head. I offered you a room upgrade, ma'am. You chose to destroy the display instead. The crowd's mood shifted further, their sympathy now firmly with the staff. Karen's bravado was crumbling, but she wasn't done fighting. Security arrived, two uniformed guards standing just close enough to make their presence felt. Maria handed them a copy of the repair estimate, her voice steady. Ms. Mitchell, you have until tomorrow to agree to cover the costs, or we'll file a civil suit and press charges for vandalism. Karen's eyes darted between the guards, Maria, and the crowd, her confidence replaced by a dawning realization of her predicament. She tried one last gambit, lowering her voice to a reasonable tone. Look, I'm sure we can work this out. I'll pay for some of it. But you need to comp my stay. That's fair. Maria's smile was ice-cold. Fair is you taking responsibility for your actions. No deals. The standoff reached a boiling point as Karen's phone buzzed with notifications. Her ex-post, hastily typed and accusing the hotel of extortion, was already backfiring. Comments poured in, not from her loyal followers, but from strangers who'd seen the viral security footage, leaked by an anonymous staff member. Is this the woman who trashed the Sterling's tree? One read. She deserves every penny of that bill, another added. Karen's face paled as she scrolled, her carefully curated image collapsing in real time. The crowd in the lobby began to disperse, some shaking their heads, others snapping discreet photos of her humiliation. Clara, still standing nearby, offered one final blow. You could have apologized, she said quietly. You could have shown some humanity, but you chose this. Karen glared at her, but the fire in her eyes was gone. She was out of moves, out of excuses, and out of sympathy. Maria gestured to the guards. Escort Ms. Mitchell to her room. She's not to leave the premises until we resolve this. As the guards flanked her, Karen's shoulders slumped, her fur coat suddenly looking more like a burden than a status symbol. The lobby, once a battleground, began to quiet, the shattered lights still glittering faintly underfoot. Karen Mitchell's world unraveled in the sterile glow of the Sterling Lux Hotel's conference room the next morning. The grandeur of the lobby felt like a distant memory as she sat across from Maria Alvarez, a lawyer named Daniel Chan, and a stack of legal documents that felt like a guillotine. The repair bill, itemized down to the last crystal shard, sat at $2.30 Iona number that made Karen's stomach lurch. Her phone, once her weapon, was now a liability, buzzing with notifications from an ex-mob that had turned against her. The viral video of her rampage had racked up millions of views, with hashtags like KarenWrecks Christmas trending worldwide. She tried to delete her account, but the damage was done. Her name was synonymous with entitlement, and the internet wasn't letting go. Daniel, the hotel's lawyer, laid out the terms with surgical precision. Ms. Mitchell, you can settle out of court by agreeing to pay the full repair cost, plus legal fees. Alternatively, we proceed with a civil suit and criminal charges for vandalism and destruction of property. Karen's eyes darted to the door, as if escape were an option. The guards from last night stood outside, a silent reminder that running wasn't. She tried to muster her old defiance, but her voice came out small. This is outrageous. I don't have that kind of money. Daniel didn't flinch. Then we'll seize assets. Your car, your home, your accounts. The court will decide what's fair. Maria, sitting silently, watched Karen squirm, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos of the previous night. The weight of her actions crashed down on Karen like the tree she'd toppled. She'd come to the Sterling expecting to be treated like royalty, to leverage her minor online clout for perks and attention. Instead, she'd miscalculated spectacularly. The lights weren't just decorations. They were a cultural and emotional touchstone, and her dismissal of their significance had turned her into a pariah. Clara's words about the lights' dedication to a young girl's memory haunted her. Not because she cared, but because they'd fueled the public's outrage. Karen's followers had abandoned her, and her inbox overflowed with hate mail. She was alone, exposed, and broke. In a last-ditch effort, Karen tried to negotiate. What if I apologize publicly? I'll post it on X, say I was wrong. That's got to count for something. Maria leaned forward, her voice low but cutting. An apology doesn't fix a $1 million display. It doesn't erase the disrespect you showed to this hotel, its staff, or the people who cherished that tree. Daniel slid a contract across the table. Sign this. Agree to the payment plan, and will consider dropping the criminal charges. Karen's hands shook as she picked up the pen. She signed, her signature jagged and reluctant, sealing her fate. The sterling would garnish her wages, sell her assets, and haunt her credit for years. Her life of loud complaints and petty power plays was over. As Karen left the conference room, escorted by security, the lobby was already being restored. Workers swept up the last of the shattered ornaments, and a new shipment of lights was due to arrive by Christmas Eve. The tree, though battered, would shine again. Karen, however, would not. She stepped into the cold December air, her fur coat doing little to shield her from the chill of her new reality. The internet would move on, but the bill would follow her forever. Back inside, Maria gathered her staff for a brief meeting. Ethan, still shaken but proud, stood beside her. "What happened here," Maria said, her voice steady, "was a reminder that actions have consequences. You all handled this with grace under pressure. I'm proud of you." She turned to Clara, who'd stayed to help document the damage for insurance. "And you, Clara, your voice made a difference." "Thank you." Clara smiled, her eyes crinkling. "Sometimes, all it takes is one person to speak up." The Sterling Lux Hotel's Christmas tree was relit on Christmas Eve, its glow brighter than ever. Guests gathered, their faces alight with wonder, the memory of Karen's tantrum fading like a bad dream. The story of the lights, dedicated to a girl who'd loved Christmas, spread through the city, inspiring donations to a local children's hospital in her name. The hotel, once a battleground, became a beacon of resilience and community. And somewhere, in a small apartment stripped of its luxuries, Karen Mitchell scrolled through X, her screen filled with stories of hope and redemption. She no longer knew how to write for herself. But the world moved on, and so did the light.